As we head towards week 9 of the college football season, the Heisman race is heating up, and we have a new co-favorite, Cam Ward, joining Ashton Jeanty atop the odds boards at 2-1. His odds shortening by plus 430. Jeanty, who was idle this week, saw his odds shortened by 30. Dillon Gabriel falls to third at plus 350, or second technically. His odds falling 90 points. Travis Hunter saw his volume fall as well, and so did his odds, going from 6-1 to 15-1. So now clearly a three-player race. And for some thoughts, we welcome in Chip Patterson from the Cover 3 podcast. Chip, we talk about Heisman moments for players that are in this race. I don't know if you'd call what Ward did Saturday a Heisman moment, but his performance was pretty impressive. What's the vibe check here with Ward?
Well, I mean, it is being just such an electric playmaker, a leader, bringing some dynamic play to the quarterback position that we have not seen for the Miami Hurricanes in a really long time. Mario Cristobal describes Cam Ward. He says he's like a linebacker. He wants to run through your face. And some of the stories that we had heard in the offseason about the way that he was, organizing, his own sets of practices with the wide receivers and really taking a lot of leadership in terms of trying to make sure that Miami accomplishes all it's going to accomplish. You want to talk about vibes? That's why I think Miami has confidence when it gets into these shootouts. When it falls into the big deficit at Cal, they know that as long as they've got Cam Ward in that huddle, they've got a chance. When they're back and forth with Virginia Tech, the same thing. And absolutely, when Louisville kept having answer after answer after answer, number one got out there and continued to lead the Hurricanes into the end zone for the touchdowns they needed. 300 yards, at least 3 touchdowns in every single daggum start. He's filling it up for an undefeated team that is in the mix for a national championship. The vibes are immaculate right now. Do we have concerns about Miami as a whole and the way that this defense has been giving up explosive plays? Absolutely. But if you want to only look at this through the Cam Ward Heisman Trophy lens, the more points you allow, the more points you need to score. We could be seeing more of the same from Cam Ward, just more and more yards and more touchdowns and more game-winning and go-ahead drives. So, Jeremy, it might not be one Heisman moment. It might be a collection of all this stellar play in the second half and fourth quarter of these shootouts.
And, of course, looking for big numbers this week, they host Florida State. All right, the co-favorite, Ashton Jeanty, is on CBS Sports Network this Friday versus UNLV. He was off this week and still leads the rushing table, but the Rebels have a top 25 defense against the run. We haven't seen it yet, Chip, but what happens to Jeanty's odds if he gets stuffed this week?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see the odds market absolutely react in a dramatic way. And if that does happen, I would say don't give up on Ashton Jeanty just yet, because while his status at the top of the board is from averaging 208 yards per game, racking up touchdowns and all these performances, what you mentioned about UNLV is right. I thought UNLV had a really strong performance over the weekend, helping the Rebels stay in that game, get stops, and then allowing Ricky White and the rest of the UNLV offense to get back into the game and go on to get the victory. So maybe UNLV was in a little bit of a look-ahead spot, but they got out okay. And what we learned is what those numbers say. UNLV's defense will be one of the best that Ashton Jeanty has faced all season long. But for Jeanty, his Heisman Trophy, ultimately his candidacy is going to depend on 2 things. Number one, how close he is, if he has not already eclipsed Barry Sanders' single-season rushing record. And number 2, where Boise State is sitting in those final days before the ballots are due, because ballots are due right after conference championships, right after we know the college football playoff. If he is the star of a Boise State Mountain West title game win, which may also be against these same UNLV Rebels, well, then he is going to have even more juice. And if he has eclipsed Barry Sanders' single-season record, well, then I think that's when we're going to go back to the idea that Heisman voters understand their place in preserving history. And when you have a single-season performance like Jeanty might have and is on pace to have, then that's going to be something that you are going to, pay homage to, likely with your Heisman ballot.
UNLV will certainly have their hands full. Jeanty has not been held to less than 127 yards in any game this season. All right, Dillon Gabriel is now the quarterback of the #1 team in the nation, and his odds fell despite the fact the Ducks shut out Purdue on Friday night. They get a ranked Illinois team this week, feeling good after they beat the reigning national champions. What could a win this week do for Gabriel's odds?
A win with big numbers and a big statistical performance would really be able to help him out here. I think that him moving around on the odds board is a little bit more of the market shuffling, just especially with Cam Ward turning in another just electric performance in that win at Louisville. For Dillon Gabriel, ultimately the things that keep you in the mix for the Heisman Trophy are all still on the table. So I'm not going to overreact to that too much. I mean, this is a Ducks team that is now #1 in the AP Top 25 poll for the first time since 2012. This is a Ducks team that has the inroad on the Big Ten championship. They are a national championship contender, and Dillon Gabriel is your star quarterback. So all those same things are there. But the reason why I want to come back to the numbers is that much like Ashton Jeanty, there is a historical side of this. And it is that right now, Dillon Gabriel is going to have a chance to be able to chase down and possibly even surpass Case Keenum's NCAA all-time records. We're talking records for passing yards, for passing touchdowns, for total touchdowns. As Dillon Gabriel continues to move up the NCAA record book, that whole historical X factor starts to play a bigger role for him. Again, we won't know those totals until we're much deeper in the season, but for the Illinois game, I think what it's about for Dillon Gabriel from a Heisman perspective is just continuing to keep growing, because he looked so much better in these last 2 weeks, the win against Ohio State, the win against Purdue, than he did in the first 2 games. And shocker, players, especially ones with that kind of experience and pedigree, need some time to be able to reach 100%, especially in a new system with a new offense. Well, he is clicking on all cylinders right now. My expectation is that on a big stage in big time on CBS, Dillon Gabriel is going to show you why he is one of those names at the top of the odds board.
Yes, and last week Oregon had 400 yards of offense for a 5th straight game. To your point, Chip, things are certainly clicking for Gabriel and that offense. All right, lastly, Colorado two-way star Travis Hunter aggravated his shoulder injury, so his volume fell, as did his odds. We've said all along him staying in this race is based on his snaps volume. So is it safe to say that he's all but out of it now, Chip?
I'm not going to count him all the way out, because counting Colorado out or anything close to it is something that's burned a lot of people. I mean, I was thinking this week, Jeremy, that they were double-digit underdogs at UCF, won that game by 27 points. They were underdogs of more than a field goal going to Arizona, won that game by 27 points. I mean, there is a chance that Travis Hunter, with individual excellence, can will Colorado to a Big 12 championship. And if Colorado wins the Big 12 championship, they're in the college football playoff. Now, a lot of wins and a lot of games before we get there to that place, but Travis Hunter now probably tied a little bit closer to team success than he was if he was just going to be an individual. But still, I mean, he is an unprecedented piece of the Heisman Trophy conversation, because even your Charles Woodson, the only defensive player to win the award, like, yeah, he had 14 grabs or something like that as a wide receiver. But this is Ashton Jeanty as a top 10, top 15 wide receiver. We'll see if he's able to continue to at least keep scoring touchdowns and contributing that way. But ultimately, he's still a first-team All-American cornerback on top of all that as well. I'm not ready to write him off just yet, because Colorado still has a path to be a big factor in the national conversation all the way into December.
He's had 77 snaps in the past 2 games after averaging over 100 snaps in each of the previous 5. Colorado hosts Cincinnati this week. Cover 3 host Chip Patterson breaking down the Heisman race after Week 8. Of course, for more from Chip and the gang, College Football Brain Trust, check out the Cover 3 podcast. The latest episode is up upon further review, taking a second look at some of the big games this week, as well as analyzing the AP poll and looking at some of the major injuries. Download and follow wherever you get your pods, or scan that QR code to get that latest episode right now.